Okay.
I will go ahead and introduce.
Yes.
So we are Healer Collective. We connect amazing practitioners like Dana to platforms like this where WellSet, which is actually kind of like the first Airbnb for healers. You can book and find amazing practitioners for one-on-ones as well as through virtual classes. And I am so happy to have Dana here. I've been following her on Instagram forever, honestly. Amazing energy, beautiful soul. And she's going to walk us through this workshop to empower your inner guide. I'll let you take it away.
Ah, great. Well, first I want to say thank you to you all, to you, Ashley, to everyone over at Healer Collective that I've been in touch with. Thank you so much for this opportunity to meet your, and to WellSet, of course, for this really generous opportunity. And now I get to meet all you new people and we get to do some work together today. And, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have tuned in for giving yourself the gift of your own precious time. I know how easy it is to, even in this time of grief and gratitude, of global pandemic, of quarantine, I still know how easy it is to what I have to do is this thing over here and that over there. And so to give yourself the gift of your own time, thank you for doing that. And thank you for signing up for this time and for, just following that call, that pull, whatever drew you to this time and me and us together today. So, I'm Dana Balicki. Hi, if you don't know me. if you haven't been following me on Instagram, or you don't get emails from me, or we haven't hung out or done some work together before, I'm a transformational coach. I'm a teacher, and sometimes in sort of shorthand, I'll say I'm a healer. But what that means is that I facilitate others in healing themselves, because that's how I actually believe that works and know that works. I live in Joshua Tree, California. And I'll share a little bit more about myself in a minute, sort of like in the context of why inner guidance work, why empowering your inner guide, right? Why this is, this is a practice, why this is work that is always important, and some of us might say more important now than ever. Right. But I do want to just share the, agenda with you, a quick little agenda with you for our time together so that you know what is going on. So first I think we sort of touched on some of that housekeeping and tech stuff. I'll say one more little thing. Just about how to work with Zoom and taking care of yourself and all. Then we're going to do some energy work together in the form of intention setting and some grounding. I'll share some frameworks about inner guidance. We could, we have a limited amount of time together today. You'll have you'll have an opportunity to, potentially do a little more work with me when you get some follow-up emails from the Healer Collective. But, I'll just, I'll give you a seed, right? That's what we'll do together today is we'll plant the seed around working with your own inner guidance. And then I'm going to take us through a really sweet and rich guided visualization. And then I'll take questions and we'll chat about it, whatever came up, whatever you're seeing and feeling. And then I'm going to give you some homework, because always homework. You're home. No one else got to do the work for you. Right? So, in terms of our time together, just take care of you. If you need to get up and use the bathroom and drink some water, turn your video on or off, right? Because all of a sudden maybe you're like, you know what, I just don't feel like being on video. That's okay, totally good. Just do what you need to do, right? Obviously we're talking about inner guide here. If you get inner guidance in the form of your bladder talking to you or something else, by all means. If you are not on your phone, and you know, like have your computer and your phone, and maybe you feel like you're prone to checking your phone if it's urgent that you're expecting, perhaps. Maybe you could just like turn off your phone or get up and like put it over there so you aren't tempted to like pick it up and poke at it. And I think, you know, in terms of Zoom stuff, we'll keep, you know, muted. And then during Q&A, we'll have the opportunity, perhaps, like if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. I'd love, you know, I'll be asking throughout the time, like little questions and like, hey, does that resonate with you? And if you feel like sharing in the chat, being like, yes, that's great. I'm not going to check the chat a ton as we're going. You know, I'll have it open, but I'm not going to like be reading everything out loud or anything like that. But where we will use it more is during the Q&A. And then if you have a question, I'll ask you to unmute yourself if you want. And then we can just make sure to, you know, get in all the info there. So that's, you know, that's that housekeeping bit. And this next part is, I invite us to set some intention together before we ground, but I just want you to know what my intention is with our time together here today and onward, right? Because now we're connected. But to support you in reconnecting with and remembering your own agency, right? Through your connection to self. And I believe everyone has a right to their own journey, and that we can allow all of ourselves here, right? Not just like the pretty light parts that, you know, feel really nice. Oh, we're just going to welcome those in. Like, you know, even these like unacknowledged parts of ourselves, right? The parts of ourselves we've pushed away, right? Like I'm just setting the intention that like we can welcome all of ourselves, the whole of ourselves in to this space together today. That we can do it with love and we can do it with safety. Okay? And you know, my job with you, besides like talking and sharing insights and guiding you through, you know, a guided visualization and answering questions, but like my big job here is to really stay vigilant for love, right? For love for us, for us here on the call, for all of those in our communities, right? To welcome all of us here, our original essences and our natural internal wisdoms, right? To like allow them forward. And don't worry, you don't even feel like, they know what's a natural, you know, what's my natural wisdom and my original essence? Don't worry. I before we started, I set the intention here, and I'm just telling you now that you don't have to understand all of the hows, and in even in what I'm sharing today or in any of the exercises we do. What are the intention we can set here is to just like be willing, right? To be curious, to explore and experiment together, to open up some space for us to become more of ourselves, right? So let's do a little grounding, and I'll guide you. This will be a little bit of a guided visualization. We'll do another one together in a little bit later in our time. But this is to just like set our energy, right? To like sort of get on the same page here, even though we're in different parts of the world, different people, different experiences, different everything, right? When we ground our energy, we can come back to like a sort of a level peaceful, like energetic set point for ourselves. And grounding is deceptively simple. You can do it very easily. And there are no right or wrong ways to do it. And it's something that you can repeat throughout the day, right? So whenever you're feeling a bit scattered about, or like maybe you're caught up in other people's energies, right? Still happens even in quarantine. You can use grounding as an energetic practice, very simple, to come back to the planet, to come back to your body, to sort of call all of your energy that may be scattered out in the world, right? That feels a bit depleting sometimes, to like call it back. Right? And And like I said, you'll get an opportunity to sign up for a deeper grounding experience with a follow-up email that Healer Collective will send you. And then when I see that come through, I'm going to even send you another sweet 7-minute grounding meditation. So you'll get a lot of opportunities to just like keep practicing to coming back home to yourself, right? And I just invite you with the grounding here to experiment, be playful and curious if you've never done this before, or even if you have done lots of grounding, still be playful and curious, right? It's a really great way to move through the world, especially in these times. Okay. Great. So this is what I call assuming the position for grounding. You're just gonna put your feet flat on the floor. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Gently close your eyes. Breathing in, down deep into your belly. And on the exhale, you can pull your navel back towards the spine. Good. And you can let your hands be gently in your lap or palms down on your thighs. A nice straight spine, not overly straightened. Let it be supple, but let's just create a nice fluid conduit for energy. Good, and then out through your nose. Or if you're stuffed up, congested, and that's difficult for you, obviously, please breathe in and out through your mouth. Whatever feels good, whatever brings you joy. That's the name of the game here today. Slowing down the body with a nice slow breath. Slowing down the mind. And bring your attention to the circumference of your abdomen and visualize it like a tree trunk with thick bark. And on your next exhale, stretch and extend that tree trunk all the way down through your seat, down through the layers of building, down into the earth, down through the crust and mantle layers of the planet. And you ask Mother Earth to receive your grounding, which she always does. And you guide this grounding trunk, the extension from your core, all the way down to the core of the planet. A molten iron crystal core, several miles high and wide. And you wrap your grounding trunk around that core 3 times and pull snugly. Yeah, good. Now we're going to draw some of that earth energy, this vital, alive earth energy up through our grounding trunk. Right, like sipping a milkshake through a straw, all the way up through the layers of planet, through the layers of city, water table, up through layers of building, all the way back up to our seat and into your body. You can give yourself permission to receive this energy. Sometimes that helps the flow there. Otherwise, just let that earth energy rise and fill you. It's traveling up your central channel, the midline of your body. Yes. And setting the intention that it is cleansing, clearing, and balancing your chakras, your energetic centers. All the way up from your root to your sacral chakra, your solar plexus and your abdomen, your heart space, your throat chakra at the base of your throat, up to your mind's eye, your third eye, all the way up to the crown of your head. And then you're going to guide and allow that energy, this vital, alive earth energy, this light to pour out of your crown like a fountain of golden light out and around you, a few feet in diameter. And then let that light gently curl back down under your feet. And for a few breaths, you are just going to let this protective, cleansing and balancing earth energy run up through you, gently rain down around you, and settle back down into the earth. Okay. So now you can gently twinkle your fingers and toes. Take some nice deep breaths in through your nose, and you can let them come out through your mouth. And let's just do a little, they're like a little sharper, a little deeper, a little faster. You can make any noise you want. I cannot hear you. One more, you can really let it rip. You all get to hear me, however. Good, good. And so come back to our bodies here. Good, and now that we've all arrived, as much as I would love to hear from each of you and hear you put your names into the pot here, I'm just gonna honor that, like, our time, you know, together here is brief but powerful. And so, you know, what I'll do is just like honor and imagine that we're all just sort of singing our names here. If you want to just like say your name, you know, just into the, you know, we're muted here, and any intention that you have for, you know, for our time together today, you can just, you know, keep yourself muted and just speak it aloud or in your imagination. And we'll just take a moment here to do that. Good. Welcome. So, inner guidance, right? Something brought you here. And maybe you're feeling like, I love connecting to my inner guide. Like, I love the relationship that I have. And yes, empowering my inner guide sounds even better. Or maybe you're like, I don't know what my relationship with my inner guide is like. And I don't know if I really have one even. Or maybe you're like, oh, I have one, but it's not a great one. Right? Like, I don't think I really know how to trust myself. Right? You know, I've been right there, and you know, for years and years, like, while I've always had a strong sense of self, I often looked outside of myself. I looked to others, to other, you know, to others' opinions, reflections, or even judgments on what was right and wrong. So even though I was very opinionated, I considered myself very much like a go with the flow person, right? And for me, what that was is like, oh yeah, no, I'm just like being easy and go with the flow. It doesn't matter. I can just like go along to get along. Whatever you want, fine. But over time, you know, that became exhausting. I wasn't really sure what I wanted. And I was surrounded by people with really strong personalities who always seemed to know what they want and then what they wanted of me. I'm a Libra. Sometimes that, you know, and there's a whole other slew of astrological little components there that that lead me to, you know, being leaning towards people pleasing, right? And being, you know, indecisive. And as a long time, before I did this work as a transformational coach, which I've been doing now for, I've had my practice for about 8 years. I was a longtime activist. So I was a grassroots radical activist, really active during anti-war movement all the way up through Occupy Wall Street. That was sort of like towards the end of my like full-time activism, when I was had already started my deeper inner work. But as a longtime activist, I loved conflict, I think on a macro level, right? Like, hey, over there, authority, like you are getting it wrong, right? I was really good at questioning outside, like the authority out there, and having judgments and opinions. But I would really like refrain from it on the like micro interpersonal level. You know, I was like avoiding conflict, and was always afraid, honestly, like at the root of that was I was afraid that someone was going to tell me that they were disappointed in me, that they were going to tell me I was doing something wrong, that I was doing the wrong thing, thinking about the situation in the wrong way, even that I was feeling things incorrectly. And I believed all that. And so I had that experience, right? So does that resonate with anyone? You know, this feeling of just like being afraid of making the wrong decision all the time. Right? I know I'm not alone in that one. You know, when it came down to it, I really didn't trust myself. And like I said, I'm a Libra, it's in my nature, right? I'm indecisive. So, you know, I think that was really just a story that I was being told and that I was telling myself. And I really didn't know how to ask myself the big questions to get answers that seemed to make any sense, or that I could really stand behind and believe in. Anyone feeling me there? Anyone feeling a sense of like, you know, like it's difficult for you to, like you have differing voices sort of pulling you in like different directions when you try to make a decision, right? Or where you struggle with that like sense of clarity, you look to other people for, you know, to tell you what to do. You know, this is like where we have a lot of common, you know, a lot of common connection, right? Leslie says, reacting versus inner wisdom, totally. Right? So many of us on some level struggle with our inner guidance. And I know that I wasn't alone, and I'm still not alone when it comes up, right? Our culture teaches us to really go outside of ourselves, right? We're trained to overwrite our internal wisdom. And this even happens, you know, in our educational systems, right? And so like no shade to any teachers out there, you all are angels, right? But like the way that our educational system, at least in this country, I'll comment on, you know, there's a lot of like memorization, and then, you know, there are different like problem solving, and that those become like the key ways in which we learn to equate our own intelligence and our own value and our own worth. And a lot of times that can override our own internal wisdom, our own feelings, our own emotional expression, right? We're taught a lot to go along with whatever authority figures are telling us, and to override our own boundaries, to ignore our feelings, and really judge the hell out of them. Do I have any people with any inner judge or any inner critic going on here? Raise your hand. I see a few of you. I see some hands, right? So I want to share something here, a visual that I think might really help, you know, sort of like, you know, show you where you might be stuck, right? This is one way of looking at it. So, Ashley, is it okay if I share my screen here? Can I do it? I know I can do that.
Yeah, of course. I think you have the ability to.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, you all are gonna see what is happening back here. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna share this. So you've got all this over here. I think every time I try to like start a slideshow when I'm in Zoom, all hell breaks loose. So you're going to get sort of the the internals of my slides here. And these are ones that I use, you know, in some of my coursework. I have a group course called Clear that I'll be opening up again soon. But, you know, this is one of my, the exercises, and it's called the inner guidance flow, right? So let me click. And let's see, can you all see okay? Yeah, I realize that this is maybe a little, you know, we'll see. You all can just chat me up if it becomes a problem. And our first step when tuning into our inner guidance here, whenever we're asking ourselves, right, or like, you know, the universe or God or whatever, however we relate, right, to asking for guidance, that's our first step, right, is asking. And I want to just, you know, just shout out here the unconscious mind, that your thoughts are requests to the universe for attention, right? We're always asking, right? So sometimes we're really asking, right? We're asking for some guidance. We're asking to know the right thing to do, the decision to make, right? And sometimes we don't think we're asking, but we're always sort of in the mode of asking with our thoughts, right? So this is why, like, I do deeper work around like mindset and being attentive to our thoughts, which you'll get a little homework on in a bit, to really begin to work with your thoughts more consciously, right? So that you can be more attentive to what you may really be asking. Like when I was describing where I was and like how things had been for me in the past, you know, I wasn't that attentive to my thoughts, and I was constantly thinking that everyone knew better than I did, or that I was going to get it wrong. And so I couldn't quite trust myself, right? I had to ask a bunch of other people before I made any big decisions in my life. So the next part here is listen, right? So whenever we're like, you know, we're moving through some connection here and trying to like answer some question for ourselves or get some information, we have to listen, right? So we ask consciously and unconsciously, and then we listen. You know, seems simple enough, right? Like we ask and then we listen. Well, this is where it gets a little tricky. And I'm going to invite you to just see yourself potentially here, because this is its own little special loop, the ask, listen, the ask, listen loop, right? So what happens in a nutshell is that we ask, right? We ask for some guidance. We ask for some clarity. What do I do about this relationship, right? And maybe we get some information, right? We get a hit like, oof, that relationship, you've tried, but it might be time to move on. Right? And then we heard that information and we were like, ooh, that seems like a lot. That seems like that seems like too much. That seems really hard. I don't know if I like that answer. Let me ask again. Right? Like, what should I do about this relationship? Right? Does this resonate with anyone? Like, have you asked the same questions over and over and over again? Right? I know I have. And I know I still do, right? I am not, you know, like, I wish I could say sometimes that this loop, that I am done with it, that it's a very unconscious loop. Right? And so this loop right here, this ask, listen loop, and then we'll go to someone else and be like, what do you think? And then they'll give us some information. And then we go to another friend, and then maybe we go back to that person a month later. What do you think? Right? Because what's happening is that we're getting information, and we have, here's the, oops, hold on, let me get back. And the trust is where we fall off, and I'll talk about it in a sec, but just this ask, listen loop, what this breeds is confusion. It breeds more lack of trust, right? Mistrust in self. It's generally exhausting. Has anyone felt exhausted by loop? I have, and there's a lot of other things that this little loop breeds, but it's not generally great, and it's not sustainable. But we get very familiar and used to being here in this ask, listen loop, right? We get used to being confused, right? Confusion, and we could do a whole nother workshop on confusion. But confusion can be a safe haven, a place that we're like, well, maybe I don't have information right now. Maybe it's not the right time to ask. I just don't know. So I'm just going to give up on that for now and just go do something, right? And what happens that could be actually hear you.
Dana, we
Yes.
lost you.
Oh.
Can you hear?
So can you hear me now though?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. I can hear everyone. It just sort of dropped off and I saw everyone like nodding, but who knows what they were nodding to.
Maybe it's the screen share.
Oh, okay. So, okay, well, I can abandon ship on screen share and I'll just tell you what the last little bits are. Is that okay with everyone? I can't quite see your faces yet. I don't think everyone has like videos
Everyone's
up again,
nodding.
but that's okay. Oh, great.
Hopefully.
Okay, so y'all, I do live in the desert, so we might be dealing with some desert internet that happens. So thank you for bearing with me. And you can, okay, Ashley, though. Oh, there's everyone. Great. Okay, perfect. So, what I was saying is just that ask, the ask, listen loop, what it breeds, and that we get used to being in confusion. We get used to like staying in that place. And we'll live there for a long time, but it's really not sustainable. You will get exhausted. You will get burnt out. And what will ultimately happen is that in burnout, we wait for someone, it's like we just want to change. So then usually some other change, the wind blows, someone comes in with some desire for you. And you're like, oh, that sounds great. I'm going to do that. Woo, good thing I didn't have to make that big decision. Because remember when I thought I had to like end this thing or move on or make this big decision? And like that can feel very scary, right? Which is why we stay in the confusion. Right? So then we end up just going with someone else's flow. And again, we have not consulted and connected with our own inner guidance. So, this inner, so we've got the next part, right? So we've got this first part of ask, listen. We know about getting stuck there. And then the listen all the way to trust. Right, that's the next step. I'm not going to pull my slides up again in case I explode the internet here in the desert internet with my hefty slides. So we go from listen to trust and then trust to act. Now, I will, what I will say is that if we, like how to make the leap, right? How do we make the leap, from the listen to trust? Well, the first thing is to know that this capacity is inside of you already, right? Like you do have the capacity to listen. You do have the capacity to trust. You certainly have the capacity to act. Most of us just go from ask, we sort of listen, and then we like jump to act, right? Anyone feel that familiar, that familiar leap? Like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to do this thing over here, right? Or we wait for someone else to act. And so we've bypassed that listening and that trusting part. And so, like I said, the first one was breeding all that mistrust of self, confusion, destabilization, exhaustion. And the second cycle, that breeds clarity, right? Increased self-trust, which is a practice, self-love, and peace, right? A sense of peace and ease. So one, how do you make the leap? It's to know that this capacity is inside of you already. And the second part is awareness, right? So like the first is honoring like, oh, wow, like even though I maybe don't know how to always like make that leap from, from listening to trusting. Like trust, and the idea here is that we know about the asking, conscious and unconscious. The listening, right, is like, you know, most of us do get hits, right? And sometimes we hear it, right? Like we have the thought, and then, you know, but it's this, we've been taught to sort of not trust our own thoughts about ourselves, right? To like not honor that we are our own best authority. And so that, you know, to be able to go to that place of listening and being like, wow, I hear what is coming through, right? And some of us feel it in our bodies, right? You might just feel like a constriction, right? And that might, you know, you might be making a decision and you're like, is this the right thing for me? And you can practice this with your thoughts even. And if it feels like constricted and like you can feel that sort of like turn inward and you're like, God, this feels bad to think of, or that feels awful, that's likely a no, right? That's likely your, you know, your inner guidance and coming through your physical body, coming through your emotional body, letting you know, like, that's a no. Right? My teachers, David Gershon, Gail Straub, talk about emotions as like your inner GPS, right? And so we, you know, everything we're talking about already here is about like how we sort of turn away from that. And, you know, the next part, right? So we go from the trusting, right? And where we try on the idea that we can trust. Sometimes we just have to start there, right? Like, oh, that's information I received, right? Like that feels constrictive. That's maybe a no. And there's going to be part of us that's like, wait, hold on. Your ego is going to come into play and be like, wait a second, we've already tried that before, remember? And that didn't work. Like our ego is going to come in there and try to like, you know, protect us, not mess us up, but protect us, keep us in a safe place, because maybe it feels risky to make a move, right? And on the other side of the like constrictive no, if you feel like a relief and expansion, right, that could be a yes, right? So I want you to like, I'm going to give you a little homework here. Make a homework note for yourself to like play with that on some like maybe smaller decisions. You might be like, do I, you know, maybe you're trying to make a big decision around a relationship or a place that you're living or your work. And that might be a really big decision. And so you're going to you practice this with smaller decisions, right? And like asking yourself, listening in, noticing how it feels. Does it feel constrictive, right? Does it feel expansive? And just feel into that. This is a practice. This is a practice I've been doing for years. It is a practice I will do forever. Right? And all of us have the capacity to do it. And what you're gonna, you know, what you'll then get from that is you'll start to like be able to like trust that little bit of information. Be like, okay, well, I felt that was a no, and this feels kind of low stakes. Let me trust that information and let me act on it. Right? Acting being that final piece. So, you know, this is like our inner guidance flow in a nutshell. And so, you know, I gave you just now a little homework on, you know, maybe practicing that, like asking, listening, trusting, acting on some smaller stakes decisions, right? Not just going to the big one that you have all this like mind mishigas maybe around, right? Go to something simpler. Practice, really tune in, give yourself some space to feel. The other thing I'd love for you to do is to just like bring your awareness to how often you go to that ask, listen loop, right? And you know, I really always like, these are the kinds of journals that I like. They're like kind of smallish, they're floppy, because I can even like, if I need to, stick them in my back pocket when I have a pocket, you know, stick them in my bag, and I keep them with me all the time. I have like a stack this big now, you know, more than that really, from over the years. And I keep a log when I'm working on something, right? When I need to like really bring attention to something. I keep a log, and I'm inviting you to do the same, right? So you maybe make a page in your, in your journal. And if you don't have a journal, like, such a great companion. And I really believe in these times, everything we're going through, like, so many of us are receiving a lot of insights, and, we have the opportunity to really, to stay attentive with our thoughts, to work with our thoughts, to work with our feelings, right? And that, like, we're going to want to go back, because this is, what's happening in the world right now with the COVID-19 and the pandemic and the quarantine, and just like, it's so much around it, like so much grief, and then gratitude, right? Like, so much loss, that many of us are experiencing in all different ways, that, like, we're going to be processing this for a long time. So your journal, when you write things down, it makes it real. If you have anxieties, or you find yourself, remember, up in the swirl, you can ground, but you can also write things down, and it will get it out of the swirl of your mind and onto a page. And the relief that you can get from that is monumental, right? So, you've got a couple homework points here, and I'm honoring our time. And I want to just, there is a visualization I want to go, I want to guide you all through, but I'm not sure we have enough time. But the good news is that you're going to get it in your follow-up email, and you can take as much time as you want from it. And Ashley, let me check in with you about that, like how that feels. Because I think, I want to make some room for folks to ask questions here. And we had a little tech issue. So what do you, like, we can send everyone this guided visualization, because I have it, I have a recording of it. And it's a really, like, it's a really sweet practice that I definitely want everyone to have the opportunity to do. But everything that we just did so far is like the primer to, like, really understand, for people to take stock of where they are. And then the guided visualization will give you even more information about your relationship to your own clarity, your own inner guidance. And it'll give you a way to work with it, right? You'll even get some more homework, right? You meet me for 10 minutes, you get homework.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're referring to that clear life, right?
No, that's actually,
Ooh, I'm losing you again.
There's some more grounding work.
We're losing you again.
I can hear you all and see you all. 1 second.
Because I was going to suggest we can put that link in the chat, so everybody can do it right after, or we can ask.
Oh, yeah. We can do either one. Yeah. So let's. Oh, great. Okay. So can you all hear me okay again? Are we back? Okay, perfect. I don't know what's happening. So why don't we take a little, like, let's take some Q&A, and then I'm going to give you all the guided visualization. And then what that will give you an opportunity to do is to do it on your own time. So then if you need to pause in the visualization part, you can pause. And if you want to take 5 minutes per section in the guided visualization, you can do that, right? If you want to take a whole hour to do it, you can do it. And that's sometimes, a really nice way to just give yourself that time and space.
So I have allowed everybody to unmute themselves. So if you guys have any questions that you want to speak directly, or you can just put them in the chat and we can answer there.
Yeah, I would love to hear, do folks have questions about, like, their inner, sort of this, what you've noticed about, like, where you feel like you might be, finding yourself in this relationship to your own inner guide, to that, like, sort of asking, listening, relationship to confusion, any of that. I'd love to hear.
Well, can I start something?
Yes.
With my issue, I knew very early in age I'm an artist, but I always struggle. I work hard to get things, but then I pull back. I do work hard and do some exhibit and pull back because such a hard journey and financially and all this pull me back. And I've been doing this so many, like all these years. And now I'm getting better to trust myself and post my artwork and express my feeling and not worry um, if it is good or bad or what other people think. So I'm starting, like with this COVID-19, I'm starting putting my feeling and attach them to on my artwork that goes with the feeling. But I never went further with my art, and I know I could do so much. And I like why I cannot go to the next step. And always
What comes up for you when you ask yourself that?
like trust yourself. You're good. That's what I say. You're good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my artwork is good. I just need to take it to the different level, and I just probably don't know how or not trusting myself.
Yeah. So what I mean, it's just to like acknowledge it sometimes, to just be like, dang, like, I know I can do this thing. Like, I wonder how many people are sort of like feeling resonant with this one. Like, I know I can do this thing. I want this thing, and I'm scared to do the thing. Right. So I think some like, just honoring, like, I know I can do this thing and I'm too scared to do the thing. Right. And to like, look at like, okay, well, what am I scared of? Right. Am I scared that people are going to, right. This is where you get to start to log the thoughts, right? Like, I'm scared that if I put myself out there, I'm just going to make things up. No one's going to like it, or someone's going to get mad at me, right? Like some of my people, like I'm going to make art about something and they're not going to like it. Or, cause all of our stuff comes down to like, a lot of times fear of like being abandoned, fear of like not being loved, fear of being rejected, right? And so we come up with all these coping mechanisms, like, oh, I can't, these thoughts of like, I can't do that. Like, that's so big. That's for other people. I'm fine over here, right? Because it feels too scary, because the risk feels too great, right? And so a lot of times it's, we're worried about what other people are going to think, and that's our imagination. We're just making shit up. Do it all the time, right? This is part of how we're conditioned to move through the world, and to worry so much about what other people think of us, right? And that we're not selfish enough. I know that word can be really triggering for people, selfish, self-centered, right? But the idea of like centering on self, right? So I would love for you to like take some time for homework and like journal, like, what am I afraid of, right? And when you get down to like, I believe that I can't do this, right? You get down to that core limiting belief, right?
I finished the Artist's Way.
Yeah, good.
I finished the whole thing.
Beautiful. And what we have the opportunity to do then is to go back and look at like, when's the first time I believed that? When's the first time I started to have that thought, right? And that gives us, we can do some deep breathing, and it gives us an opportunity to connect with like the very earliest memory we have in this life. Could bring you to a past life, I don't know, but usually it's this life. And it's like a child version of us that had this fear of like, well, if I like this thing, if I do this thing, if I express myself, if I am myself, then I will be, and maybe there was some consequence. Maybe you did something and a parent got mad at you, right? Or you had a fight with a sibling, or, it's usually very early in our very earliest relationships. And we carry that process through the rest of our lives, right? So just like bringing some tenderness, that visualization of that young one who first came up with that thought of like, I can't be myself, because if I am, like, I will be abandoned or unloved, or it will not be okay. And just send that young one some love.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and just keep doing it. We can never give that inner child enough love.
Yeah, I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. Yeah,
Right.
I
Thank
don't
you so
care.
much.
Like if your art is messy, your art is not gonna bring any money, your art is not paying the mortgage, your
Right.
art this, like I'm doing it.
Yeah, good. There's room for all of us. We're needed. All of our medicine is needed right now in the
Yeah.
smallest and biggest ways. All of us. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it. Yeah. Anyone else? I saw CT had a question. How do people start when they have been conditioned to come from a place of fear for so long? You know, I would say CT, I don't know where you are in this little setup here. You can feel free to unmute yourself. But, you know, when we've been conditioned to come from a place of fear for so long, so let's just like honor for all of us that like it takes time for us to get here, right? Like it's been a lot of programming, right? External and then internal, because like we internalize the external programming, whatever was handed, things that get handed to us, right? We get born into families, we get born into thought programming the same way we get born into families, right? And also like trauma and dealt with trauma, we now know like is transferred to us epigenetically. So there's a ton, ancestral trauma, generational trauma. It's like there's all these ways that we carry so much more than just ourselves, right? So the programming, the conditioning is old and takes a long time. It doesn't mean it's going to take another however many decades for you to even start to move out of it. No, you can start to move through it, but to honor like, wow, okay, this is going to take some time. Nothing changes overnight like that, right? Like everything takes time, and like to give ourselves again the gift of time and the gift of practice and the gift of becoming more awesome over time, right? And so one, I would just say that is like honoring that like things take time, even though we want them to happen quickly. And, you know, what I was saying to Suhad was, you know, like to understand the conditioning, right? So to understand where your conditioning comes from is such, and to forgive yourself is such an important place of tenderness that you can like so easily give yourself, right? So you can, you know, as I was mentioning, like the programming, right? And you like look at it and you're like, what's the programming? Where's the gut place of fear? What am I afraid of, right? And like, I'm afraid that this is going to happen if I do this, right? And then you can look at the sort of inverse of that, of like, if I am this, then this will happen, right? Which is your limiting belief, right? It's the belief, your core limiting belief that like, if I am this way, right, then I will be, and then negative consequence, right? So that was something that happened way, way, way early on in your life, and was probably something that's been handed down also a bunch, right? And so if you can look at belief and understand it, and you know, or just honor it and be like, that's what it is. Wow, that's harsh. That's a harsh thing I've been telling myself for a really long time, right? And like one of the sweetest ways, and you know, if we're gonna talk about like, you know, quick ways to shift our energy, is to and to do some healing work with ourselves, is to, you know, to look at like, when's the first time that one came forward for me, right? And to like really, you can put some white light around, you can do a little quick grounding, and then you can, you know, just drop your energy down to the center of the planet, right? Remember you're safe and protected, and give yourself permission to go back and remember when that first time that one came up for you, right? It's like giving yourself permission to time travel and to like sort of quantum travel, and connect with that part of yourself that's the one running the show every time the fear comes up, right? So like 7-year-old you, right? 8-year-old, 10-year-old you, 5-year-old you that has that fear, right? That was legitimate for a child and that you've been carrying forward. Does that make sense, CT? And so how did anyone else that this is resonating for, and just then seeing that one that it came from, right? Visualizing that version of you, maybe even pull out a photo and you'll put it up on an altar, you know, or you just put it somewhere close to you where you can tune into it often, and just send some love and forgiveness to that part of yourself. And each time it comes up, you can always make a log. Each time it comes up, you come back and you're like, oh, that one again, right? And you can visualize that young one. And, you know, where this relates back to this, like, ask, listen, trust, act, is that, like, we learned really early, pretty much most of us, all of us, to not trust ourselves, right? So that was where we got stuck in that little ask, listen loop, right? We forgot our own authority, or we had other people, because they had their own damage and their own painful programming, telling us that our authority was not legitimate because someone told them that, right? So it's like, we get to be the breaker of chains, right? Like mother of dragons, breaker of chains, to, you know, to close this cycle out. So I don't know, I didn't hear any more from CT. So is it okay to, Ashley, to answer another question? I just want to.
Yeah, we have time.
I mean, I have time. So Tiffany, do you have a quick way to regroup to establish the connection to my inner guide after my ego gets involved and I get confused? Totally. Such a great question. And I think the visualization that we're going to share will give you some more information too. But I'm glad we're taking questions, because sometimes I fill up time so much that, like, there isn't room for questions. So this is a good practice for me to remember. A quick way to regroup to establish the connection to your inner guide after your ego gets involved and you get confused. So I would say step one, this might be this quick way. Let's see how quick it will become. More quick as you practice it, right? So I would say the first thing is to notice, like, confusion. When you're in confusion, what it feels like in your body, right? Do you start to sort of like numb out, blur out, anxiety, right? Like, just notice, like, what does and this might take a little tracking for you, but what does confusion feel like in your body? So you just get a trigger. Your body's like, we're in confusion. And then you're like, oh, I'm here. Right? Like and so it's like you start to create some awareness around, like, oh, I've gone to confusion, right? I've gone to that, like, safe play haven of confusion, right? So awareness and establishing, like, what that feels like in your body. Now, you can use this along with, or you can, you know, sort of take note of these parts and see which ones work for you. Like, I always invite people to, like, take whatever works for you and leave the rest. But the ego. So knowing that the ego is going to always be like the loudest voice. It's like the first. I used to use this visualization, and I'm not sure how fair it is now, where it was like going into a party, because it was a party that I went to when I was, like, in my 20s, and I walked into this loft, and there was this, like, loud, like, tech bro guy, and he was just like really, he was like, hey, huh, and he just, like, his arms were moving and he was talking really loud, and he was, like, taking up all the space of this little New York Manhattan loft party, right? And I didn't know this guy. I'm sure maybe he was wonderful, but anyway, he was taking up a lot of space, and he was, like, the first voice I heard, and I was like, whoa. And then I was sort of caught up in that for a minute. And then I heard, like, kind of this nice music on in the background. And then finally I was able to, like, find my way over to, like, this DJ and this, like, lovely, you know, music happening. So I kind of play with, like, the idea of ego and inner guidance like that, where, like, your ego is going to be, when you go to ask yourself, when you go to ask and then you go to listen, your ego is going to be the one who shows up first, shows up loudest, says, like, well, that's how it is. Remember, we did it last time that way and it didn't work. Forget it, right? And you're going to feel a sense of, like, constriction usually, right? As you start to track, you're going to notice constriction. And so the ego and that constriction is really, like, and then the music, right? Like, the good music I found in the background, like, that's the inner guidance, right? Like, it's not the loudest thing, but it feels really good. And if you start to listen for it and you feel a little more relieved, you feel a little more expanded, a little less contracted, right? A little like more free, like that's, and it's not going to be the loudest thing there, but it's going to be steady and consistent, right? So if you can start to notice your ego is going to be the loudest thing, your inner guidance is going to be like the one that's talking, but it's like kind of in the background, right? It's going to take a little more practice to listen, but it's going to feel better, right? So ego usually feels contracted and sort of like, ugh, right, you're right, ugh, that didn't work, right? And the inner guidance is like, yeah, okay. It might be a little scary, right? Because like when you ask and you listen, right, and you receive information, remember the reason we go back to ask is because it feels a little scary sometimes. We're like, ooh, I don't know. So it's okay. A little bit of risk can be involved with the inner guidance, but you want to learn, and this is for all of you, and this is for me. It's like we all want to learn, like to discern, and we can absolutely do this, the energetic difference between contraction, constriction, ego, ugh feeling, and then the feeling of like risk that our inner guidance is inviting us into, that we're like, oh, that's scary, right? And it's so easy to then be like, it is too scary, we can't do that, right? It's like this really fine little dance, but you can be like, oh, that feels scary, but I actually think that it might be the best thing for me, right? So like you can practice. So do I have a quick way to regroup? Yes, what I just said, but do you have to practice it for a while? Yes. Will it become quick? Yes, right? So see what works for you. Tiffany, if you have any follow-up questions on that, but it's like, you got to like pull yourself out of it, right? You got to notice it like, oh shit, I'm in confusion. Oh shit, my ego's telling me all these things now and I'm shutting down. Take a few breaths, feel it in your body. Be like, I know what's happening. Don't have to decide. I don't have to go there. I don't have to go there. What's my inner guidance saying? What's that soft music on in the background? Right? And you can totally turn that into a quick process. Great. Okay, cool. Tiffany likes my tech bro party example. Are there any other questions, my dears? Anything else? And I do want to share, I'm just opening up my link here to pull up this really sweet guided visualization. Ashley, is there anything that you have to say or anything that you want to add here? Or
It's incredible. We're so happy to have you. You're such a like, beaming, radiant light. It's gorgeous.
Oh, gosh. Thanks, y'all. It's so good to see all your shining faces as well.
Yes, we appreciate everybody being here, spending their afternoon with us.
Yes. Ooh, here we are. Here we are. Okay, so I'm sharing this with you. I did just modify this. Okay, we should be good. If there's anything in it at the beginning, no, I think it's all good. Never mind. I'm not even gonna like say anything that I was gonna say. Hold on, I gotta get back to Zoom. I gotta get into the chat. Hold on, y'all. Oh, I don't think I can post. I don't think I'm co-host again. So I can't, or maybe I am.
You are, it says you're a co-host.
I'm trying to paste, you all don't go away yet because I'm trying to paste the link to this guided visualization.
And
oh, there it is. It was just making a little like boom, boom noise, but now it did it. So you all can go ahead and click that, bookmark that link, and that's going to take you into, that's going to give you your guided visualization to go into what I call the caves of clarity, right? So what you're going to do with that, it's just a guided visualization. You'll need your journal and pen, colored pencils, glitter pens, whatever you like, with you. And, oh, Kathy says, I don't see a link. Does everyone else see a link?
I see it. I repasted it though, in case.
Oh, great. Perfect. And everything will be in there for you. And you can just take it, and there'll be points in there where you can pause to take as much time as you want to see whatever you need to see. Just give yourself permission to see, let whatever comes up. You don't have to logic yourself through it. Just like let your imagination, right? Again, part of your inner guidance, just lead the way. And then there's a little bit of homework at the end of it too. So you're going to be busy with homework, right? You're going to be busy listening to your body, to ego and inner guidance, to logging when you get stuck in that little ask, listen loop. You know, like I'm here for you as a resource. You're going to get a follow-up email that will have another guided visualization with grounding. So if you want to practice all this stuff, it's here for you. And I'm so honored to, I would love to just spend the rest of the day with you all. But thank you again so much, Ashley and Healer Collective, and
Thank
to
you
all
for
of
being
you.
here.
And if you have any questions, you know, you can find me over Instagram, Dana Balicki, DanaBlix, and DM me, and I'm here for you. Yeah.